Our final two honorees today are being inducted into the Minnetonka Faculty Hall of Fame, which recognizes former teachers and administrators who inspired in students a passion to excel with confidence and hope. Our first inductee is Sue Adamek. When Sue Adamek was first hired at Minnetonka High School in 1957, she tells us she wasn't expecting to stay for long. She took the job as a long-term sub for one of the social studies teachers with the goal of simply earning enough money to continue attending graduate school. What Sue says she found when she arrived, however, changed the way she viewed teaching. After coming back as numerous times and teaching for 2 years in New South Wales, Australia, she was hired permanently in Minnetonka, where she taught classes ranging from American Studies and European History to Economics and Ancient Egypt. Countless messages came in nominating Sue for the Faculty Hall of Fame, praising her brilliant teaching style, ability to connect with her class, and her kind heart. And I can still remember as a first-year teacher, you were doing some of the professional development, and I remember learning my lesson plan design from one of our early seminars. So it's great to see you today. Introducing Sue as one of our former students, David Infanger, class of 1995.
Hello, my name is David Infanger, Minnetonka class of 1995, and it's my honor to introduce and congratulate Sue Adamek into the Minnetonka Alumni Association Faculty Hall of Fame. I first met Sue as a sophomore in her advanced placement course in European history, but our paths have continued to cross 25 years later. Something that became wonderfully obvious as a student in Sue's classroom was how much she cared about all of us. Her classroom discussions left no cracks for opinions to slip through, and every one of us walked out of there feeling that ours had been heard and valued. For the high school sophomore, not exactly the easiest time in life for a teenager, to feel important made all the difference in the world. But as important to Sue as having your own opinion was to understand why you felt that way. She had no tolerance for textbook regurgitation as a placeholder for the student's thought, which she demonstrated through many handwritten why or why not prods written in the margins of the blue test booklets she'd hand back to us, certainly to me. Reflecting back on my time as a Minnetonka student, I realized how easy it was to take top-level education that we were receiving for granted because it was all around us. And I now realize how much effort Sue devoted to making sure her students never did that. For her, you had to earn it. There is no course syllabus which forces critical thinking from the student. That onus remains on the teacher. And Sue excelled in this regard and was a tremendous benefit to me and my peers after leaving her classroom. Expanding on her care for her students, when I left Minnetonka and headed to college, the first letter I received in the mail was from Sue, congratulating me on challenging myself and reminding me to think critically. And immediately, I crowned myself as her favorite student until I learned that the 4 other classmates who went to the same college as me all got handwritten letters from Sue as well. I still have mine, but I didn't need it to know that she was rallying for the success of all of us. This is just one instance of her dedication as a teacher and a mentor, and I believe that when Sue was checking in on us, she was also checking in on her own effectiveness as an educator, making sure that the skills she instilled in us were still being applied long after European history. Which raises a second precept of the Adamek classroom. Education is full-time and lifelong. This stems from Sue's pursuit to find informed opinions from her students, which can only be created from pursuits of their own. A few years back, Sue reached out to me and we grabbed lunch together, and despite the 20 years that had lapsed since I was in her class, she hadn't changed a bit. Before we even ordered, she had peppered me with several questions about what I'd done with my life since we last spoke, and she's done this every single time we run into each other. And I think she was as excited to hear about my stories as I was to tell them to her. And in turn, when I finally got to ask what she was up to, Sue would tell me all about the travel that she'd been doing and what she'd seen and learned from the world. Practicing what she preached, education is full-time and lifelong. After college, my interest led me into a career as a scientist, and over the past 15 years, I have shamelessly patterned Sue's approach to mentoring as my own as I get to teach aspiring scientists and physicians. There is no greater skill to the scientist than critical thought, to be used to pose questions that, when answered, will benefit many. Sue taught this to me, and I teach it to my students. And as they move into careers of their own like Sue, I check in on them to let them know I'm still rooting for them. And as they share their successes with me, these accomplishments should rightfully be shared with her. Now, I realize that in the celebration of Sue's career, I've spent a fair amount of time talking about my own. But for me, the effectiveness of a mentor cannot be judged by what she does, but rather what others do with it. And I continue to deeply appreciate how Sue taught me to think for myself, for my professional development, and for the development of students she's never even met. I've communicated this to her personally in the past, but the opportunity to convey it to others is rather limited, and so I thank the Alumni Association for recognizing her career and impact as I and so many of my peers have come to appreciate. Congratulations, Sue, and thanks for always being there for all of us.
After years in the classroom, speaking before a group isn't unusual, but having a mic is. Is it set right? Thank you, David. I'm awed. Last April when the word came, I was stunned. I look around the room today, and there's a huge group of my former students from the class of '59 standing over here, and others from other classes. I'm surprised at how many are here, and I'm so flattered, to say nothing about the former colleagues. I haven't checked the counts, but there's an awful lot of former social studies teachers already in the Hall of Fame, and I'm flattered as can be to have been asked to join them. It was particularly nice to hear that Bob Negley was being honored today. Bob was in one of those classes that were assigned to me when I came as the end of the year substitute, and it was his and his classmates' fourth hour modern problems class that kept me teaching at Minnetonka, which meant, in addition to a career that I loved, I met my husband, our 2 children, and 2 of my 4 grandchildren. All have attended Minnetonka schools. In fact, there's been, except for very few years in the early years of this century, there has been an Adamek either as a student or a faculty member at Minnetonka since 1954. I privately tell myself we're part owners of the place. At any rate, thank you all. And especially Lorianne, thank you. You got this all started. Thanks.